The wooden bookshelf at the end of the east corridor was bowing under the weight of time and neglect. The books on the middle shelf leaned to the right, propped against each other at a weary angle. A thin layer of gray dust covered the tops of their spines, dulling the colors that had once been vibrant. The space seemed frozen in time, untouched, while the rest of the hall continued to breathe. Maybe this is just another one of those quiet stories, made to help you relax. And sometimes, that's all we really need. Helena paused before the bookshelf. She held a small notebook, but wrote nothing. Her eyes traced the uneven line the books formed. It was a silent imbalance, a small disarray that didn't bother those passing in a hurry, but weighed on the atmosphere of the old village. She decided that shelf wouldn't spend another night like that. The care would begin now. The decision brought immediate relief to her shoulders. She knew exactly what needed to be done. It wouldn't be a quick job, but it would be a good one. The kind of task that asks for patience and returns tranquility. She would restore firmness to the books and color to the wood. The space would once again be a place of repose, not abandonment. Outside, night had already enveloped the village. A steady, gentle rain fell from the dark sky. The sound of drops tapping against the tall window panes filled the main hall. It was a continuous sound, a soft hiss that blended with the silence of the thick walls. The scent of wet earth found invisible crevices and entered the building, mingling with the sweet aroma of old paper and dry wood. The library was empty. The front doors were already locked. Only a few floor lamps remained lit, creating islands of yellow light throughout the hall. The rest of the space plunged into long, peaceful shadows. Helena liked the library this way. No hurried footsteps, no whispered voices, just the sound of water falling outside and the silent presence of the bookshelves around her. She took a step forward and touched the spine of the most tilted book. The cover was of a rough fabric, worn at the edges. The contact made a small cloud of dust dance in the air, illuminated by the nearest lamp. The book felt heavy, dense with pages that hadn't seen light in many months. Helena withdrew her hand and stepped back. The task was clear. The wind blew a little stronger outside, throwing a gust of rain against the window pane with a hollow sound. Water streamed down the glass in winding paths, distorting the light from the street lamps. The atmosphere inside the room seemed even more protected and warm in contrast to the damp night. Helena tucked the notebook into the pocket of her thick cotton apron. She needed to fetch her things. The work awaited her. Helena walked down the central corridor, moving away from the disorganized bookshelf. Her soft shoes made almost no sound on the wide plank floor. The sound of the rain accompanied her, changing tone as she passed different windows. At ones, the sound was sharp and quick. At others, protected by the branches of a large tree outside, the sound was muffled like a murmur. She reached the service room at the back of the building. It was a small space, smelling of neutral soap and natural wax. A single lamp hung from the ceiling, illuminating a light wooden counter and a green-painted metal cabinet. Helena opened the cabinet door. The hinges made a low, familiar creak. Inside, everything had its place. She took a piece of white cotton fabric. It was an old cloth, washed so many times it had lost any roughness. The fabric yielded in her hands, soft and ready for use. She folded it into a perfect square and placed it on the counter. Next, she picked up a small brush. Its handle was smooth wood, darkened by constant touch, and the bristles were light and very flexible. It was the ideal tool for sweeping dust without scratching the paper.
The sound of very distant thunder rolled across the sky. It was a deep, long sound that made the wooden floor vibrate slightly beneath Helena's feet. She waited for the sound to completely fade before moving again. The rain seemed to thicken a little after the thunder, tapping on the roof just above the service room with a heavier rhythm. At the back of the cabinet, she found the round metal tin. The lid was a bit stiff, but yielded with a firm twist. The scent of beeswax and almond oil rose into the air. It was a rich, warm, comforting aroma. The paste inside the tin had a soft yellow color and a smooth surface, untouched since its last use. She closed the tin carefully and placed it beside the cloth and brush. Only one thing was missing. In the corner of the room, a wooden cart with 2 empty shelves and 4 rubber wheels rested. Helena pulled the cart by the metal handle. The wheels turned smoothly, making a continuous, low sound on the slick floor. She settled the cloth, brush, and wax tin onto the cart's bottom shelf. The top shelf would remain free to receive the books. She pushed the cart out of the service room. The way back felt different. Now she had a purpose in motion. The cart rolled ahead of her, steady and obedient. She passed the magazine section, the empty reading tables, following the line of windows. The rainwater continued to wash the panes, creating curtains of water that blurred the darkness outside. When returning to the east corridor, she parked the cart beside the bookshelf. The yellow light of the floor lamp bathed the wooden cart and highlighted the dust on the tilted books. Helena looked at the middle shelf. The space was prepared. The tools were there. The silence of the hall and the sound of the rain formed the perfect backdrop for what she was about to do. She took a deep breath, smelling the old paper mixed with the damp night's freshness, and reached her hands for the first volume. Helena's hand touched the first book on the far right. It was the volume that leaned the most, almost toppling into the empty space beside it. She firmed her fingers on the top and bottom of the spine and pulled it gently. The book offered slight resistance, as if accustomed to its crooked position, but soon came free. Its weight settled into her hands. It was heavier than it looked. She turned the book and observed it for a moment. The cover was a dark blue, almost black, with golden letters that had lost their luster. There was a line of dust marking exactly the part that had been exposed to the air. Helena walked the short distance to the cart and laid the book on the top wooden shelf. The sound of the book touching the surface was a soft, pleasant thud. She returned to the bookshelf and picked up the second book. This one was thinner, bound in a material that mimicked leather. As she removed it, she noticed it was stuck to its neighbor due to past humidity. She moved her wrist slowly, separating the covers with a very faint sound of paper unsticking. No marks remained. She carried it to the cart and placed it on top of the first, carefully aligning the edges. The removal continued, one volume at a time. Helena's rhythm was constant. Pull, feel the weight, walk, set down. With each book removed, the bookshelf's shelf revealed a little more of its surface. The original wood was hidden beneath a layer of dust and small paper particles that had loosened over the years. Where the books had rested, the wood was lighter. Where the air touched, it was darker and opaque. The rain outside changed direction with the wind. The drops stopped hitting the window beside the bookshelf and began to strike the main hall's high roof. The sound shifted from a liquid tap to a broad, diffuse hiss. The library seemed suspended within that constant noise. Helena liked how the sound of water isolated the outside world. There was no traffic, no footsteps on the pavement, just the water and the work of her hands. She reached the middle of the shelf. There was a set of 4 identical books with red fabric covers. They were firmly squeezed against each other. Helena put her left hand on top of the books to stabilize them and used her right to pull the first one in line. The rough fabric brushed against the neighboring volume, producing a dry sound. She repeated the gesture for the other 3, feeling the rustic texture beneath her fingertips. The stack on the cart began to grow. As the bookshelf emptied, the space seemed to breathe. The absence of the crooked books changed the shape of that corner. The shadow they cast disappeared, allowing the lamp's light to reach the back of the shelf. The back was made of the same dark oak as the sides, but it was marked by fine scratches and old circular stains. Helena removed the last book. It was a small, wide volume with yellowed pages showing at the edges. As she lifted it, she smelled the strong, characteristic scent of old leaves, a smell reminiscent of dry autumn leaves stored in a box. She settled it on top of the stack on the cart. The bookshelf was completely empty, a long strip of bare wood, covered in dust and marks of time, stretched before her. The first step was complete. The empty space on the bookshelf looked like a toothless mouth. It was a long wooden plank that begged for attention. Helena bent down and picked up the soft bristled brush from the cart's bottom shelf. She positioned herself at the left corner of the empty shelf and began to sweep. The bristles touched the wood with a soft sound, like a rough whisper. The gray dust easily detached from the surface, forming a small wave that rolled ahead of the brush. Helena swept the dust to the right edge and collected it in a cupped hand, depositing it into a small wastebasket near the window. She ran her bare hand over the swept wood. It was free of loose dirt, but the touch was dry. The wood was parched, crying out for nourishment. She put away the brush and picked up the wax tin and cotton cloth. The cold night air, entering through the wet window's invisible crevices, met the scent of beeswax when she opened the tin. The blend of rain smell with the warm wax aroma created a new atmosphere in the corridor. Helena wrapped the cloth around her right hand's fingers and took a small amount of the yellow paste. She brought her hand to the shelf and began to apply the wax. The movement changed, no longer straight lines, but small, firm circles. The cloth touched the dry wood, and instantly the oak's color shifted. Where the wax touched, a deep, rich brown appeared, as if the wood were drinking water after a long drought. The contrast between the waxed and dry parts was visible and satisfying. Helena advanced slowly. She felt the wood's texture through the cloth. There were small grains, natural undulations that the wax filled and smoothed. The sound of application was a moist, rhythmic friction, circle after circle. She pressed her fingers lightly, ensuring the beeswax and almond mixture penetrated the oak's pores. The physical effort was small, but it demanded presence. Her arms swayed in a calm rhythm, accompanying the sound of rain on the roof. The light from the floor lamp struck the already waxed part. The surface wasn't shiny like glass, but had a satiny sheen, a soft, warm reflection that gently returned the light. The old marks, the small scratches and circular stains didn't vanish, but gained a different aspect. They ceased to be signs of abandonment and became marks of history, integrated into the shelf's dark, nourished tone. She needed to get more wax from the tin twice to cover the entire length. When she reached the right corner, her fingers traced the junction of the shelf with the bookshelf's side, ensuring no space was left unattended. The scent of wax now dominated the east corridor, chasing away the aroma of dust that had once resided there. Helena paused and stepped back. The wooden plank was transformed. It was no longer an opaque, forgotten surface. It was a solid, clean, and renewed base ready to receive the weight back. She folded the wax-stained cloth and placed it on the tin's closed lid on the cart. Her hands were lightly perfumed and warmed by the movement. She looked at the stack of books. Their home was ready, but they also needed preparation before returning. Helena turned to the wooden cart. The stack of books looked like a sleeping tower. She picked up the soft, bristled brush again and pulled the first volume from the top of the stack. It was the small, wide book, the one with the scent of dry leaves. She held it with her left hand, keeping it firmly closed so dust wouldn't get between the pages. With her right hand, she ran the brush along the book's top edge. This was where dust accumulated most, forming a thin crust on the paper. The bristles swept the dirt away with a quick, light motion. The dust fell into the air and soon settled at the bottom of the cart. Helena turned the book and cleaned the side edge, then the bottom. The cut of the pages revealed their natural color, an aged but clean cream. She ran her fingers over the cover. There was a small dark stain near the spine. Helena took a different dry cloth, which she kept in her apron's pocket, and rubbed the stain in gentle circles. The friction warmed the cover material, and the stain yielded, revealing the original tone beneath. Satisfied, she placed the clean book in an empty space on the cart's bottom shelf. The next book was one of the red fabric volumes. As she picked it up, she noticed one of the corners was folded inward, creasing the first pages. She opened the book carefully. The sound of the thick paper moving was crisp in the corridor's silence. She found the creased page. Using her thumb and forefinger, she smoothed the paper's corner, pressing from the center to the edge. The crease didn't vanish completely, but the page lay flat again. She closed the book, brushed its edges, and cleaned the red cover. The fabric seemed more vibrant after being freed from dust. The volume was placed beside the first, on the clean shelf. The work found its own rhythm. Pick up, hold firm, brush the edges, clean the cover, check for simple issues, put away. With each book, a small discovery. One volume had a brown leather spine that was dried out. Helena used the tip of the wax cloth to moisturize the leather, massaging the narrow strip until it became soft and shiny again. Another book had a loose thread in its binding. She tucked it back inside the cover, protecting the stitching. Outside, the rain continued its constant song. A colder wind blew against the nearest window, and Helena saw from the corner of her eye the drops hurrying down the dark glass. The contrast between the damp cold on the other side of the window and the dry warmth of manual work inside the library brought a feeling of deep comfort. She was in no hurry. The clock on the main hall's wall showed a late hour, but time there seemed not to matter. She picked up the dark blue-covered volume, the one she had first removed from the bookshelf. It was the largest and heaviest of them all. Dust was encrusted in the golden letters of the spine. Helena used the tip of the brush to clean inside each letter's grooves. The gold, once dull, began to capture the lamp's light. She ran the dry cloth over the entire smooth surface of the cover. The deep blue re-emerged, clean and imposing. When the last book was brushed and cleaned, the cart's top shelf was covered with small traces of dust and loose fibers. In contrast, the bottom shelf held a renewed collection. The books looked different. They were no longer forgotten, dusty objects. They were clean, whole, with their colors and textures revealed. Helena put away the brush and cleaning cloth. She rubbed her hands together, feeling her skin clean and dry. The group was ready to return to its place. Helena looked at the newly waxed shelf of the bookshelf and the clean books on the cart. Now came the part of returning each item to its space, but not in the same way as before. The disorder would not return. She visualized the arrangement. She would start with the tallest and heaviest volumes on the left side, creating a solid base, and leave the smaller ones for the right side. She picked up the dark blue book with golden letters. Its familiar weight was in her hands. She carried it to the left corner of the oak shelf. As she set it down, the book's base touched the waxed wood with a soft sound, without the rough scrape from before. She pushed the volume against the bookshelf's side wall. It slid easily over the fresh wax, stopping perfectly straight. The blue spine formed an exact vertical 9. Next, she picked up the brown book with hydrated leather spine. It was almost the same height as the blue one. She leaned it against the first volume. The leather touched the blue fabric softly. Helena ran her fingers over the tops of the two books, checking the alignment. They were firm, supporting each other without yielding. The base was created. The return process required choices. She picked up the 4 red fabric volumes. They formed a collection and needed to stay together. Helena carried all 4 at once, holding them with both hands. She rested them on the shelf, feeling the texture of the clean wood beneath the book's bases. With a gentle push, she joined the red block to the brown book. The colors began to compose a pleasing pattern: the dark blue, the warm brown, and the rustic red. The bookshelf was taking life. The rain outside seemed to slow its pace a little. The intense sound on the roof transformed into a more spaced-out dripping. Water accumulating in the gutters flowed down external pipes, creating a thin rushing sound that entered through the building's thick walls. The lamp's light remained steady, casting Helena's shadow against the opposite wall as she moved from the cart to the bookshelf. She continued the transfer. A green hardcover book, 2 gray cardboard-covered volumes, a storybook bound in faded yellow fabric. With each edition, she adjusted the alignment. If a book was a little too far back, she pulled it millimeters forward until all the spines formed a continuous, straight line at the shelf's edge. The act of aligning brought a silent satisfaction. It was the materialization of order. The shelf filled from left to right. The empty space diminished, replaced by the solid presence of paper and fabric. The scent in the air was now a perfect blend: beeswax on the wood and the clean aroma of old books. There was no longer smell of dust or abandonment.
Helena picked up the last volume. It was the small, wide one, the one with the yellowed pages. She carried it to the remaining space on the right side of the bookshelf. It fit perfectly into the gap that was left, resting gently against the bookshelf's right side. It closed the line. There was no more tilting, no unevenly distributed weight. The books stood straight, shoulder to shoulder, filling the shelf from end to end with firmness. Helena released the book and withdrew her hands. The act of building was complete. Helena took 3 steps back, moving away from the bookshelf. She stopped in the middle of the east corridor and loosely crossed her arms in front of her body. Her eyes scanned the finished work. The middle shelf, which had once been the point of imbalance for the entire section, was now the visual center of the bookshelf. The difference was clear. The oak wood, once opaque and gray, now showed a dark, nourished tone at the edges where the light touched. The line formed by the books was perfectly straight. The spines, free of their layer of dust, displayed their colors with dignity. Blue, red, brown, and green coexisted in harmony. The gold of the first book's letters caught the floor lamp's glow, creating a small point of light in the middle of the corridor. The entire space seemed to have changed. The feeling of weight and abandonment had vanished. The bookshelf no longer looked tired. It looked strong, capable of holding those stories for many more years. Helena felt a lightness in her chest. The physical effort had not left her exhausted, but rather fulfilled. It was the good feeling of seeing something broken work again, of seeing something forgotten remembered. She walked slowly to the right, changing her viewing angle. From the side, the perfection of the alignment was even more evident. No spine protruded beyond the others. No cover sunk backward. They formed a solid block. Helena smiled almost imperceptibly. No one but her would know the state that shelf had been in just a few hours ago. The readers who arrived the next day would pass by and see only a well-maintained bookshelf. Invisible work was her favorite. The rain outside had transformed into a fine drizzle. The wind had stopped. The silence inside the library grew deeper. The sound of sporadic drops tapping on the glass was now a detail, no longer a curtain of noise. The atmosphere breathed an absolute calm. The scent of beeswax continued to float through the air, creating an aura of cleanliness and care around the bookshelf. Helena uncrossed her arms and put her hands into her apron pockets. She touched the small notebook she had tucked away earlier that evening. The problem that had made her stop there was resolved. The mental note of worry was erased. She looked at the shelf above and the shelf below the one she had cleaned. They were in good condition, but the middle shelf now shone in a special way. It was proof that time and wear can be reversed with a little attention and manual work. She stood there for long minutes. The yellow light bathed the corridor. The air was fresh. The silence was a pleasant companion. Helena wasn't thinking about what she would do next, nor what she had done before. She was simply there, sharing the space with the books she had cared for, feeling the solidity of the bookshelf and the peace of the empty library. Disorder had been replaced by order, forgetfulness by care. The night had served its purpose. The moment of contemplation naturally came to an end. Helena turned to the wooden cart. It now carried only the used cloths, the dirty brush, and the closed wax tin. She held the metal handle and began to push the cart back down the corridor. The rubber wheels turned smoothly over the planks, producing that low, continuous sound.
She retraced her steps, passing the reading tables and the magazine section. The library seemed even quieter now that the work was done. She entered the service room, put the wax tin back in the green cabinet, and placed the cloths in a laundry basket. The brush returned to its place on the shelf. She pushed the cart into the corner of the room and pulled the lamp cord from the ceiling. The room plunged into darkness. Helena returned to the main hall. She walked to the floor lamp that illuminated the east corridor. Before turning it off, she took one last look at the shelf. The books were there, firm and aligned. She pressed the button at the base of the lamp. The yellow light extinguished with a dry click. Night shadows took over the corridor, but the sense of order remained in the dark air. She walked to the large front window. The fine drizzle fell on the cobblestone street. The streetlight outside reflected in the puddles that had formed near the curb. The water in the street was still, mirroring the pale light. The wind gently swayed the branches of the nearby tree, causing a few larger drops to fall on the pavement. Helena untied the apron knot at her back and pulled it over her head, folding it over her arm. She felt a good tiredness in her hands and shoulders. The library was at peace. The scent of wax, old paper, and rain formed the building's final breath. She watched the puddles shimmering outside for another moment, listening to the distant sound of water flowing in the gutters. Then she turned to the exit door, ready to let the space rest until the next morning.